Hi, all. We're Daria and Ivy, the team for not-so-giant women.
Hello.
Today's episode is number 24, an indirect kiss. Daria, who's going to kiss?
So we've only got one blossoming pairing in the show, but they do like to mess with me with the titles. So will this be Stephen and Connie, or will it be, I don't know, Lion and Onion?
Aww. Blossoming romance between Onion and Lion? The show's weirdos who don't listen to anyone?
Oh, it just suddenly started sounding plausible.
Oh, well, in some way it's going to be indirect, so we have a mystery.
I'm reminded of a John Donne poem.
Oh, okay.
But I'll expand on that if it becomes relevant after the episode.
Haha. Sounds like a plan. I guess we'll jump in and watch it so we have stuff to talk about.
Okay.
Hey.
Go.
Are the crystal gems will always save the day. And if you think we...
Hey, Connie. Oh! Big steps.
Yeah. 2 in a row, huh?
Yeah. The big steps and some weird art.
Yeah. We've got Paul Vallejo back again, so.
Yeah. By this point, I am familiar with the notion of the Paul face, and Paul was getting in full Paul face mode this week.
Yeah. Raven does some of that stuff too. Weird characters doing strange stuff with their faces. I think they both love it, so they were perfect for this episode, which I guess you're going to summarize for us now, yes.
Yes!
Yay!
Well, this one's kind of a split across time, so to make it easier, I'll actually tell it in chronological order, more or less, rather than jump back and forth. But most of it is what Stephen is relating as a story to Connie when they meet for a picnic, and she asks him why there's a fence around there, or if it's a new fence. This fence is because things were already unsafe. Amethyst was messing around by the edge of a cliff and fell off a long way to the bottom. And when Stephen and the others found her at the bottom, Pearl noted that they need to build a fence there because Amethyst has fallen off it. But more seriously, Amethyst in her fall has cracked her gem. This is more serious than simply damaging her body, which really is just kind of Tuesday to her by this point. But a crack in the gem is a very serious thing. Amethyst tries to downplay it, at first just noting she has a swollen, googly eye. But as things go on, she is having more and more trouble keeping herself together. The others tell Stephen that Rose Quartz, his mother, had healing tears, and as inheritor of her gem, they think he should have the same ability, or the same power, rather. He tries to cry an amethyst gem, but can't manage it. The next step, with no tears coming from Stephen, is to find Rose's healing fountain, which, when they get there, Pearl notes contains loads and loads of her lacrimal essence. Or would, if it was actually working. It has become overgrown with all kinds of thorny vines. Garnet and Pearl go off to investigate to see if they can reach the fountain. Amethyst, meanwhile, is going more and more downhill. She is starting to lose her shape, and her speech has kind of regressed to quasi-backwards sounding aphasia, word salady things. And Stephen several times tries to get himself to cry over her gem, but cannot manage it. Poor boy and poor gem. They find the fountain itself, but it is run dry, so no healing lacrimals there. The other gems go off to investigate, while Amethyst progressively gets worse and worse, her body getting all strung out, spaghettified, and parts of her appearing in the wrong places, and she's not in full control of her actions. She runs into things, she bounces around, she loses track of bits of herself. The vines are still closing in. Stephen realizes Amethyst may not be long for this world, as the crack in her gem is getting worse and worse, and so is the health of what's left of her body. He embraces what he believes to be a dying Amethyst, and this brings him 2 tears which fall on her gem and do nothing. Turns out, despite kind of taking it as read, that he does not have healing tears. However, the fountain springs back into life, gushing healing pink fluid over everyone, including Amethyst, who is restored to her usual bubbly, more or less normal shaped self. And Stephen thinks his tears have healed the fountain. However, it turns out it was just a blocked pipe, which I guess feels kind of harsh for Pearl to tell this to him, but A, this is his flashback, and B, it probably wouldn't be very good for him to go on believing he has healing tears when he in fact does not. She tells him he has no healing tears and they don't actually like him much at all. Well, that's not what she says, but it's what he felt like she said as he's been relating this story to Connie all this time. As he's telling Connie the story, he tries on her glasses in exchange for her getting to take the juice he has been drinking. So Connie has no trouble crying, of course, during all this Amethyst might die parts of the story. So
Yes.
it's a shame she doesn't have any healingness. Stephen still feels kind of dejected at his lack of power and feeling like he's going to just be cast out for his lack of healing tears, as this seemed to be a very Rose thing that he can't do. However, when he gives Connie her glasses back because they're giving him a headache because they're not, his glasses and his eyes generally work fine, she then gets the same kind of headache, or she gets the same kind of headache as she leans in close to him, almost as if they're kind of going to kiss, but then, ow! Why does she have a headache? From her glasses, because her eyes have healed and she has 20/20 vision. They realize that this is because Stephen was drinking the juice from the juice box and he gave it to her, and his saliva would have washed into her, and he does not have healing tears. He proudly proclaims he has healing spit. He rushed off to tell the gems while Connie worries about what she's going to tell her parents or her optometrist, and pokes the lens out of her glasses and puts them back on anyway. And we go to credits with Stephen in a much improved mood. And Connie's slightly fretting about being able to see. So, as noted before, we learned a lot, and this does kind of tie into the John Donne poem. So I may as well get that one dealt with, the comparison I saw. I don't know if you, Ivy, or you listeners and viewers are familiar with a poem by John Donne called The Flea. This is basically the narrator telling a woman that because a flea has bitten him and bitten her, their blood is already mingled, so they may as well sleep together.
I believe I read this in high school.
That's when I first read it too, and it stuck with me.
Mm-hmm. I had a senior year high school teacher who was really obsessed with lots of things that were about a subtext of sex. So I'm pretty sure that's when I read it.
Yeah. I switched schools, and the last year in my previous school and the first year in my next school both had a unit on John Donne. So I studied him twice because they just had their years in different orders, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it definitely stuck with you.
Yeah, and the indirect kiss being sort of the saliva mixing through the Durian Juice box, to me seemed a similar kind of notion.
Yeah. I think that trope of indirect kiss is like I've seen it referenced as applying a lot in anime.
I'd believe that, given the anime approach to such things as kisses and first kisses in particular.
Yeah.
A first kiss which they didn't get this week. That's what you get for healing your friend's eyes. He doesn't kiss you.
Yeah.
But so many feels this week. Amethyst has her body sort of took on all the different shades. There's that body horror again. And
yeah, a little bit.
Especially for those who don't recall or for some reason are listening even though they haven't watched, the main malfunctions her body has, amongst other things, are one where her body parts are like in the wrong place, like her head on the end of her leg instead of her foot and it's all jumbled up. In the other, she's all stretched out, but extremities sort of being on the ends of strands or tendrils, and it's quite unnerving, especially as this is when she's losing or basically lost the ability to communicate, and very sad because she sort of pulls her last strength to manage words to Stephen as she almost dies before the fountain switches back on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the way that they portrayed Amethyst's body horror kind of stuff was interesting, partly because she didn't really seem to be concerned herself. She wasn't really freaking out. But then also because she's the one we always see changing shape and stuff. So it was like, it came across as less scary to me than it normally would have, you know, if somebody was freaking out themselves. Like everybody else was freaking out, but she wasn't.
It kind of freaked me out on a more emotional level, her body horror, because she's the one who's normally able to change shape and does so at the drop of a hat. Obviously, she's losing this ability that she can't even shapeshift herself back into her normal configuration. So she's dying inside, her mind's going as well as just her body, as seen when she just bumps into things and starts glitching out and can't speak. And it's very painful when she gathers her last strength to try to turn her babbling into coherent words right there at the almost end.
To tease Stephen that he cares about her, it really seemed like she was very focused on how Stephen was feeling about what was happening to her. Like, don't worry about me.
And I don't know if her lack of concern, and I still haven't reached the decision on this, well, in the past 10 minutes, is just Amethyst being Amethyst, Amethyst trying to calm down the others because she does know it's serious, Amethyst not understanding how serious it is because, well, again, Amethyst, or the crack has already, the damage is already going into her mind and she doesn't realize how serious it is because her mind's already starting to break down.
Right, so she's just kind of defaulting to her usual mode of like, it's not serious, it's not a big deal.
And short-term dementia, for want of a better word, is not letting her completely process that she has taken what for her kind is a quite grievous wound that is not getting better.
Right. Their whole species is not used to that even being possible.
And as we see, this crack is, and whether it's this particular crack or not, unsure, but it's getting worse. She's not just damaged. She's dying. They make that pretty clear. Yeah.
And that the longer she spends with it cracked like that, the more susceptible she is to the crack getting worse. And then she gets worse. It makes it really clear that the gemstone really is them.
Yeah. Well, her body glitches out like a bad transmission a few times.
Yeah.
Like it's not even solid, and it could be taken as sort of her inner workings is not even able to sustain her body, which is particularly tragic for one such as Amethyst because she gets the most pleasure out of her physical form. She is the one most involved in her corporeal body. She is the one who eats and sleeps and dances. So this is, I think, to her in some ways beyond the others, even if it's not literally true as we just brushed on. I think to her, her body is her. She is not a gem wearing a body. She is a body that has a gem.
Yeah, she probably does think of herself more like that than the others do, seems like.
Because, we've been able to piece together, and as you just said, the gem is them. That's where they go back into when they're healing. That's, as they say, if it was just the body, that'd be something they could cope with. But I think she feels herself right through her body. So I think for her, losing her body, especially just because of this annoying little vulnerability on her chest, is especially tragic.
I could definitely see that interpretation being like an accurate read on her. Yeah.
I mean, I could see, for example, if Garnet had such a crack, she might try to play it down, but she might also have a plan for how to fix it already. For all we know, she's already got a backup plan for what happens if one of her gems or both of her gems get cracked. I don't know how this works if you have two gems, but I don't know if you need one or if you need your total, but I don't know. Again, we've only met 3 gems, only seen one of them have a crack on. So
right. And Garnet better watch herself because she's always punching stuff.
Well, maybe the inside of the gauntlets are cushioned.
Yeah, they better be.
Well, I'm assuming the gems are actually the gems, not the gem people, are actually pretty strong. But Amethyst plummeted off a cliff and, so far as we can tell, directly landed on hers onto a rock. And that's probably more than they usually take even in a battle.
Mm-hmm. I wondered about it when she was falling off, because she was falling off long enough to have like a reaction to it emotionally. This is embarrassing. I was thinking in a lot of other situations, if it was actually dangerous, she would have shapeshifted into something that could fly. But she's just so, normally a fall wouldn't hurt her. So she's like, nah, whatever.
Yeah, she'd probably be, well, it's going to suck for like a few seconds and then I'll shapeshift into manatee and jump in the ocean for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to tell if they experience anything similar to pain. Like, we've heard them say ow a few times, but who knows, if you don't really have a body the way we do. I don't know.
Yeah. I've kind of assumed they feel pain in the moment, if you will, but it might not continue to affect them in the same way it does us.
Yeah.
Well, for them, if we're in pain, in theory at least, it's supposed to be, this is a signal that part of your body is damaged and needs attention, whereas to them, that's not quite the case.
Yep. Yeah, if their body is damaged in a critical way, it'll just disappear and they'll come back and make a new one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, most of the grunts and owls and things often come from Amethyst, who is the most corporeal of them. So
yeah. There was the one when Stephen bit Garnet to see if she was real when he came out of Rose's room, and she goes, ow.
Yeah,
I love that.
That's just her all over. Oh, and they were in pain after they were fused.
Yes, they suggested that Sugilite had overworked their bodies and it was painful.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I almost called her Jabberlite for some reason.
Oh.
I hope this isn't going to be a thing I develop of just not being able to keep the various gemstones and characters straight in my head. I sometimes have to research actual gemstones for work, and I think occasionally one will just cross-pollinate over someone's name. Oh,
yeah. You seem to have, as far as I remember, perfect recall of everybody's name, so it's refreshing, because usually people take a while to incorporate new characters, and, you just spit them right back out. I love it.
I try to pay attention when a character's name is actually said, because there are a lot of shows where a character's name slips by and no one catches it. And you have to work it out from reviews or credits or something.
Mm-hmm. I always wonder about with Steven Universe when, if they introduce a new gemstone name, if, the results for Googling that go through the roof. People want to know, how do you spell that? What does it look like? What kind of weird lore can we decide about based on assumptions regarding this gemstone? I've heard you can make, in some industrial industries, you can use garnet to make drill bits or something. It's a tough gem.
Yeah. So her name is well chosen.
I guess so.
But yeah, a lot of feels and a lot of learning in this week's episode. Obviously the big one about gem anatomy, but rather than simply sit down and lecture us on how this works, we get quite swept up in one of our heroes having really all of our heroes, but one in particular having a really awful time of it. And in fact, Stephen then has an awful time because one of his friends almost died and he feels the others have rejected him.
Yeah, there's so much going on in this episode, and I really liked the storytelling technique for getting all of these elements into one thing. Ultimately, they have to keep it focused on Stephen and his perspective. And his main thing is, number one, my friend is going to die. And number two, I have this power to save her, but I can't turn it on. And then followed by this revelation that he doesn't even have it. And he feels so rejected. And he's telling all this to Connie in this flashbacky kind of situation. It's really one of the brilliant storytelling techniques that they've used, because they've really made it very clear right from the beginning he is in a bad way. He is sulking and he is flopping around like a potato sack.
He's kind of melted.
Yeah, he's just like a weird sandbag of a person. And Connie knows. Connie can tell something is wrong and she has to coax it out of him. You know, and at first we think he's sad because something happened to Amethyst, but eventually we come to find he's very depressed that he wasn't able to help at all, and he doesn't have this ability that everybody was counting on him to have. And it's sort of relatable in a weird way to feel like he has come to the conclusion he has not risen to the standards that were set for him, and that everybody must be disappointed in him, as disappointed as he is in himself.
Well, this is the first time in his development that it's basically been said, oh, you should have this power, and he flat out turned out not to. So it's not,
right.
I mean, disregarding that it's turned out to be a different bodily fluid.
Right.
On other occasions when he's not been able to bring out his power, it's because it just hasn't quite charged up yet or not quite developed. But here he produced the tears and they just completely did not work.
Right. Unexpected.
It probably didn't help that, A, this was a very important thing because they thought it was going to save Amethyst's life, and B, they flat out told him, oh, you'll have this power because you have your mother's gem, where it's usually been a bit more speculative.
Mm-hmm.
And going way back to when his shield first manifested, they were like, oh, it's a shield, so, which suggests that they weren't expecting that to be a carbon copy of Rose's equivalent ability, and it wasn't, whereas this is something they expect on a one-to-one basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But he just somehow in the transition from Rose to Stephen, it ended up in his saliva instead. And
yeah.
I could speculate on that, but I think, I don't know.
It's somewhere in there.
Yeah, well, the rose quartz gem probably never anticipated being stuck to a human, and in some ways it might just be trying to manage the best it can.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to compare, saliva is a little grosser, I guess, than tears, but it's a lot more easily producible.
Yeah.
So he's probably lucky. I mean, certainly he is probably not want to go around licking sick people, but at the same time, it's easier than crying and trying to collect the tears. So he's got his own Stephen-y way of doing it.
And fortunately, unlike some other characters who have a similar power, he doesn't seem to be suffering any kind of equivalent exchange thing.
Oh, yeah.
There are a few who, when they heal the other character, they get sick or injured or whatever to the equivalent amount of the healing.
Yeah, I've never liked that. I don't like the idea of that there's always a payment or a detriment if you can help someone else with an ability you have, that there has to be some kind of payment, some kind of cost. And for Stephen, that has not seemed to be the case at all. I mean, he might occasionally get tired from something like struggling to produce a shield or something, but so far it just seems like this is something they can do.
Yeah, he probably feels a bit ill if he has to go around spitting on people all day.
Well, I really liked, I mean, like you said, this is full of lore and stuff. This is telling us something specific about what happens when a gem gets cracked, and then also about Rose's abilities and what Stephen's equivalent is. But then there's this really subtle aspect of it in the middle where Stephen is frustrated with his inability to cry because he feels like his feelings are really complicated about his mother, because he doesn't really feel sad. There's sadness, but he doesn't miss her. He can't.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what happened, but he's not met or known her.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we've been told she gave up her physical form to give life or give birth to him, but we don't know exactly what that means in real terms.
Right.
He did seem a bit confused at the statues of his mother. Pretty sure he knew what she looked like by now, given there's a huge portrait of her in the treehouse. But
yeah.
Maybe he was more just stunned that someone built a huge statue of her.
We do not know who built that. Clearly
probably
it was
Pearl.
with Rose's cooperation. Oh, probably Pearl, you said?
Yeah, Pearl seems to have a bit of a thing for old mate there.
Her healing lacrimal essence.
Yeah, because of stuff like that. That's how I got there.
Yeah, she seemed very protective of Rose's place and upset that Garnet was hurtling a rock through it to get through. And yeah, definitely Pearl was jacked up during this episode.
Rose seems to have a lot of projects stored aside.
Yes.
We've seen her dojo training area thing. We've got this. There was the Moss side project, which eventually worked itself out. So
yeah,
we haven't seen the others have this, but we don't know if that's a character thing or if they just don't have to stumble across them because they're not dead.
Yeah, this makes me want to ask you a probing question very early in the conversation. So I should probably do it.
Yeah.
Because based on what you said, okay, so she has a bunch of places, like projects, like you said. There's the secret place that Lion took, that Connie and Steven. And also her room is a place that he's been that is a remnant of her. There was the Moss, like you said, there's this place, all of them, and I promise this is not like a leading question one way or the other, I just want to know your perspective on it, is that everybody talks so glowingly about his mother, but every place that he's been that is associated with her seems to be trying to kill him or kill people. They're all very dangerous, and that's almost like a dichotomy there. So do you have any like thinky thoughts about kind of why Rose's powers seem to be about healing and protection, but then a lot of the places that are associated with her are not healthy at all?
For some of them, and while I haven't seen if she has more, I'm quite prepared to, without being spoiled, believe there are other rose quartz constructions out there. For some of them, it looked like she might have been trying too hard, or what ended up too hard, especially when she had to effectively abandon all these things because she gave up her physical form or died, or however we're putting it.
Mm-hmm. And didn't leave anybody in charge of maintaining them. Yeah. Clearly.
Whatever actually
Get
happened,
a weed whacker in there.
Yeah, whatever actually happened, she's not there. So, I mean, it could be without anyone to maintain a healing fountain that it can, of course, stop if a blocked pipe, because obviously in practical terms, it's just a fountain. It's the tears that are magic. But if there's the healing tear water getting everywhere, maybe that beefs up the local flora. Maybe that's why it gets overrun with vines. And the moss, it seemed like that was something she was dedicatedly working on and just kind of started getting its own ideas about how to operate once she was no longer pushing it along. And the dojo would be a perfect example of, again, trying too hard. All those things we saw are probably great for training when you're a gem warrior who's been at this for hundreds or thousands or whatever of years. But so they're probably great for honing her fighting skills, but for some kid and his friends and their lion who just wander in, it's because she set it so high. If it weren't for the quirks of the story, that could well have just killed or injured them. I don't know if they have some kind of safety fail-safe, but so I think because she puts a lot of herself into her work to really, really drive at things, when she's not there to maintain that much of herself, and we're talking figuratively here in the same way regular people put a lot of themselves in their work, things can get out of hand. I mean, the fountain was huge, water everywhere, and was supposed to be continually flowing. And if she was popping in every however so often just to check on it, brush out the pipes,
cry a little.
Yeah, it was probably fine. But because she made this huge healing device and disappeared, the pipes are going to back up, the weeds are going to overgrow it, and who knows if it had been longer before they'd had to go there, maybe it would have been completely inaccessible.
I think when they teleported in on the warp pad, you can see some brambles flew off when they appeared there. So that was already happening.
Yeah, so I think she's hoisted by her own petard that she's so dedicated to her art. She's not like, just planting a few trees for Earth Day or something.
Yeah. Makes me think of the line that Pearl said in there where she said the place, she said, it's a mess without her guidance, directionless, pathetic, clinging things, she says, while she's clinging to Garnet. That's that's a good way of, I guess, putting into perspective, is that if she was working on these things, they needed her to be part of it to continue to function. And without her, they just kind of wither or become destructive.
Yeah, whether she anticipated that or not before her giving up her physical form, disappearance, death, whatever, we don't know. Maybe she just kind of assumed the others would step in. And in the projects we've seen so far, that is simply not the case.
Yeah.
Or maybe the dojo just has a big dial that goes from easy to hard level and there's no one looking for it.
I think Rose having healing tears, it's a really interesting character trait for her, because not only because it's another protective ability, but also because if she's a fighter, then that means anybody that's on her side kind of gets a do-over,
Yeah. So. And brings up question of whether powers and personality are necessarily complementary, or if she just lucked out, or if you're born, whatever happens to gems, born, hatched, soldered with healing tears, does that mean you grow into a nurturing personality, or the other way around? Or are there people who've got the rubbish end of the stick, whose desire is to conquer and destroy, and their power is to heal people and create warm feelings?
Yeah. Stephen having another protective, healing kind of related ability, they just keep piling up, because now he's got 5 of them. He's got the shield, he's got 2 kinds of bubbles, and he can lick things and make them better. So this, along with his displayed very front of his personality kind of empathy, it's all the stuff that they usually give to girls on fighting teams, and he's got them all. Whereas the ladylike beings that he fights with, they punch first and ask questions later. So it continues to kind of build this idea that a little boy can be the compassionate one and can have the healing and the protection abilities.
That's pretty
I think
awesome.
It's really cool. Yeah.
And
I like it.
In story, it's another personality and powers going together. He's empathetic one, and he likes everybody, and he's getting these healing and protecting powers. It's not a case of, Stephen, we know you like everyone, but try not to keep incinerating their brains or something.
Right. Yeah. And I like that that's who he is, and he's never disappointed. This is one of the things he contributes. He wants to be like his mother. He wants to be a healer and a protector, and, be able to take care of weird acid spitting monsters.
Yeah, he has no trouble
refreshing
in either the literal or more literary sense, being his mother's son.
Now I wonder how long he's had the ability to lick things and make them better, because Garnet just tells him one day that he must have healing tears, which it turns out he has healing spit. But how long has he had that? Did it just surface, or has he been keeping himself free of cavities since he was born?
Yeah, because most of us in our daily lives don't really lick, cough, or spit on people very often.
Right.
So it'd be hard to tell if it came up.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, we don't know if he went to the dentist and they got over their arthritis or something.
Yeah. Actually confused me a little bit. There's some details of the healing stuff that I want to talk about that I'll have to wait to talk about them. But specifically with healing Connie, I have to admit it bothers me a little that her being nearsighted is considered a wound that can be healed, because it kind of isn't. It's just the way your eyeballs are formed. So it's interesting that his spit recognized that as something that should be fixed. Yeah,
I thought these things too, that, I mean, granted, we don't know if Connie's nearsightedness is acquired. If it was acquired due to injury, which does happen, then that would make sense. It would still have unfortunate implications with a sort of low-level healing narrative thing, but it would make sense. But yeah, to what extent does it understand such things? As, like you say, does it know that eyesight is supposed to be at a certain, well, quote unquote, supposed to be at a certain level and fixes to that? And if so, what else does it go with? Is it defaulting to Stephen's eyesight? Does it just lucky that Stephen has good eyesight, and when it saw the difference in Connie. It improved her vision.
Right. I mean, the real answer is it's magic, but I mean, when you try to science, it kind of comes out like if he shared a juice box with somebody with a tattoo, would it say this tattoo is not supposed to be here and like clear up the tattoo that was a scar on their skin?
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that.
Well, even in magic terms, it still raises question. I mean,
It does.
to get
Would you grow your appendix back if you've had it out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this for obvious reasons hasn't come up in the podcast before, but I have twisted legs, but I was born that way. So
right.
Would someone who was born that way with me, would it try to untwist them, for want of a better word?
Mm-hmm.
Or would it go, oh, this is the default setting on this person?
Right. It's got an interesting kind of implication regarding disability and like, what if you had a heart defect and you were born that way and then you had surgery to fix it? Like, would the surgery be considered to be an injury and they undo that and give you a defective heart again? Or would it just say, no, this is what we consider to be optimal. And so this is how the magic spit is going to make you be now. It's like, yeah. I don't know. Is it going to heal a haircut? Is it going to heal a cavity?
And it's
a question.
There are a lot of questions, especially because this has been put onto other people from the source being Stephen, in this case, Connie being other people. It's not like, say, Wolverine, where you can go, well, Wolverine's body knows what it's supposed to be like, so it can work it out for itself.
Right. I have pierced ears. Would it heal my pierced ears?
Yeah, exactly. I do comprehend that Connie's eyesight was an easy way to illustrate it for the people at home. Also has this, I mean, though given the very last shot, this might not carry on going forward. There has on and off been a thing with kids with glasses not seeing characters of glasses on TV. And it's like, oh, look, we fixed Connie so she doesn't have glasses like you anymore.
Right.
And that's, as you say, wider implications if taken to a greater sphere of disability.
Right. Well, I've heard some people kind of discussing how common vision correction is to the point where people don't even really think of it like a disability. But, personally, I wear contact lenses and I have really bad vision that when it's uncorrected, it's not functional. Like if I were to read a book, I would have to move the book in front of my eyes because I wouldn't be able to see a whole sentence at once. It's really like catastrophically bad. And, I wouldn't be able to find my way down the street properly if I didn't have vision correction. Most people's is not that severe. And, if, say, glasses were as uncommon as needing a cane or needing a leg brace, people would react to it differently. And, there's a lot of fighting in, at least in my country, where they talk about how you shouldn't be expected to accommodate certain things with the Americans with Disabilities Act. People are saying, well, you can't expect to be able to get into every building. And, well, we gave you a ramp. It's not easy to use unless you have a certain kind of wheelchair, or you can't really get into that bathroom if you're if you're seated. But, it's like they try to do it and then they act like you're asking too much for it to just be functional.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely seen it. I've worked in and still participate in disability advocacy. So all these things are sadly very familiar.
Mm-hmm. And it's only because visual correction, the need for it is so common that we don't process it that way. But it's just like that. And it's usually not a wound or a sickness. It's just, the way eyeballs have evolved lately, that they become longer and, I don't know all the details, but that's what I guess nearsightedness usually is.
I'm the other one where you can see stuff far away, but up close is more of a problem.
Okay. Farsightedness.
Yes. That is the everyday English term, which I was referring to.
Yeah.
I just forgot the name of the thing my eyes have.
Then you get to be both when you get older. My eye doctor told me to start watching for it after I crossed 40. She said it happens very quickly. After you cross 40, you stop being able to focus. So, I don't know. I need Steven to lick my juice box.
Wow, that sounded, yeah.
Oh my goodness, it does. I didn't say that. We're not going to censor it though. I mean it literally. I need an indirect kiss from Steven. But, I'd rather do that than have to deal with bifocals. But I live in a world without Steven's magical spit.
I've also got a weird one where without the glasses, it's hard to turn off eye straining.
Yeah.
So in some ways for the close-up vision, one of the things this weird glasses do is make my vision slightly worse, but stop me automatically straining to see things and hurting myself a lot.
I see.
It's kind of weird. I don't actually know the word for that other than straining too hard even when you don't want to.
I'm not sure either. The kind of contact lenses that I wear, the prescription is so bad that they have to order them and they never have them in stock. And I mean, eyes can get a lot worse than mine, but it's uncommon to have as bad as mine. But I don't have astigmatism, and both my eyes are the same now. They didn't used to be, but it makes things a little easier.
At least you're
symmetrical. And I like to wear contact lenses because I don't like the pressure on the top of my nose when I wear glasses.
But before this turns to the Opticast, cartoons.
What was that?
I said before this turned into the Opticast, cartoons.
Yes. Well, I guess as a segue, I can say, what's your opinion on? Do you think Connie will continue to wear her glasses with no lenses in them, or do you think she's going to stop wearing glasses?
I think she'd stick with them for a bit at least. If nothing else, she has to cover that. What am I going to say to my parents thing?
Yeah. I imagine that there would be a reaction of some kind if she came home and said, I don't need to wear glasses anymore because I indirect kissed this boy.
Well, it wasn't technically a kiss, Mom. We shared fluids. Why are you crying?
Yeah. My eyes are all better now. I'm healed.
But I think also it's possible with her kind of quasi-timid, still getting out of her shell personality that she still kind of feels her glasses are part of her face.
Yeah. And her character design does look kind of strange without them. Well, I mean, especially since when we first saw her, she was making one of those crumply faces. And that was very relatable where Steven is like, how do I look? She's like, I have no idea. She can't see. Yeah. That's a thing, though. People do like to try to put other people's glasses on and be like, wow, your eyes are terrible.
Oh, yeah. Oh, but me and my friends still do that. So.
That's funny.
The two of my friends, their prescriptions are the exact opposite of each other. They cancel each other out if you're messing around and wear both.
Wow. They're made for each other.
But if Connie starts to continue to bloom from her sort of, she's not entirely insular, but she's not outgoing either. And I think as she starts to, grow up, basically, she may lose the glasses if she doesn't need or want them.
Right.
I mean, this is assuming she doesn't just think she looks better with glasses or something. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like the representation of having characters with glasses. I mean, she does fall into the trope a little bit as kind of like the reader and the smart one, the practical one. But at the same time, she's a lot more too. So, and, she's not just, she goes to tennis practice and she has like all these things that she has to do and stuff like that.
So we've definitely been getting the impression in the times we've seen her of her sort of growing and becoming a bit more socially confident via her friendship with Steven. And actually having an ongoing friendship is apparently new to her too, which probably doesn't hurt. Yeah.
We don't know what her relationships are with others outside of with Steven because we only ever see her with Steven. But yeah, there's definitely this suggestion at the beginning when she met him that she didn't really have friends. So I guess this is going to teach her a lot about how to have one and be one.
Yeah. Maybe her parents finally got steady gigs and she's been able to stick around for a while this time.
Yeah. It's not really expressed as such, kind of like where she's based. So
at the start, she said that one of the problems with her making friends was that she was just not staying in one place very long.
Yep.
And she's either staying in Beach City now or she's near it or she's coming back to it a lot, which is enabling her to actually be around the boys she's making friends with.
Mm-hmm. I liked Connie being part of this one too, because it ultimately we learn about Steven, what Steven's actual power is through her getting healed from it. But overall, she wasn't important to the center narration. So it was really cool to have her back and have Lion back and see that. I just think that the storytelling was really brilliant in this one.
And also, it was interesting and character building to see Connie's reactions to the parts of Steven's story as he told it. And I loved when Lion brought sort of completely drained Steven, just slumped on his back, just kind of dropped him there.
Oh, yeah.
And Connie, though concerned, is by this point, not entirely thrown by her friend coming in slumped over a lion and being semi-communicative.
She seems like she understands he's dramatic. And I noticed she tries several different coaxing mechanisms to try to get him to spill the beans. Steven. And he's just vibrating and making Ren and Stimpy faces.
Yeah. The other thing about his face design is Steven often looks kind of simian from the side because they put his jowls or his jaw or something further out than some other artists.
Right. Yeah, the bottom of his face just kind of bulges out like that from just depending on who draws him. It's more pronounced, I guess. You're not the first person I've heard say that. I have another friend who says sometimes he looks like a little monkey. Plus the way they draw his ears. So
yeah.
I'm not quite sure who's responsible for that.
But this is a very whole episode in that some episodes you watch and you completely feel that they're only 10, 11 minutes long and you occasionally feel, oh, we've wrapped up because it goes next commercial break or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, it felt a very whole and complete story of Amethyst's plight plus a minor story with Steven retelling it. And it felt like it was longer than 11 minutes, at least to me.
I agree.
And some episodes, you feel the length, and I think the writers feel the length a bit too, because the pacing does occasionally get a bit wobbly trying to get into that shorter. I think some stories, while they don't finish badly, they do finish comparatively abruptly, whereas I think this built up and down in all the right places.
I definitely agree with you. This is one of my favorites in the first half of Steven Universe Season 1, just because of the way that it's presented and how many, it hits all of the scoring mechanisms here. Like if I'm going to come up with a score for something, it has emotional stuff, but it has lore and it has interaction with the characters. It has everybody that's in it has a story and is in a different place at the end.
Yeah, it's probably going to lock in as one of my favorites once I sort of process it.
Yeah. What would you say are some other favorites? Just curious.
Together Breakfast.
Yay!
For just being such a romp. I've forgotten the title, but Onion and the action figure.
Really? Oh, wow. Onion Trade.
That's right, because I've rewatched that a couple of times since we talked about it, and my weird fixation with Onion.
You just like Onion.
Yeah, and probably also just the kind of story it is that also it's large scale, but also kind of incredibly frivolous because it really is just about this strangely self-spoiled boy and action figures, even though they do go on to endanger the town by covering it with action figure bubbles.
Yeah. Together Breakfast and Onion Trade.
Yeah. As I mentioned, it's usually after I've processed something for a while that it sort of, whether it locks in as to one of my particular favorites or not, and it can occasionally change from my first reaction. Probably once we've got to the season 1 midpoint cliffhanger, I'll probably marathon the 20 whatever it is to that point and do a sort of, now that I'm more familiar, proper reassessment, whereas most of my rewatchings has sort of been small, single or small clumps of episodes. And occasionally it's just kind of random based on what file I find or something.
That'll be really interesting if you do a rewatch of the first, after we get the next 2 episodes in, and then you can put the events of the last 2 episodes of season 1A into context with the entire rest of the season and see what you come up with. That'll be really interesting to discuss.
I've certainly on some rewatches picked up little things, like when I noticed the hand gems and the star and on the door, which...
Oh, for Garnet?
Yeah, which as we've later started to realize how important the gems are to the gems, this seems like more than a stylistic touch than it did in episode 4. And at that point, I'm still only vaguely aware that 1 or 2 gems is the norm, and for all I know, all these people have bodies covered in gems or something. I have listened to some of our old episodes I've been editing, going, "Oh my goodness, younger me, you just don't know anything about this show yet, do you?"
Well, that's the charm of it. And I don't want to rush the development of those, thoughts about any of this, any theories or any connections that you're making. Just, it's part of what makes it so great to be able to kind of relive it. Yeah. And I think with some of those things, like showing you confusing stuff like that so early, is that casual viewers will forget about it, and people who really want to dig into the mysteries of the show will say, wait a minute, what does this mean? Yeah,
I mean, like a minor thing, I remember we've talked about when new characters have turned up and you've said, oh, they're in the title sequence since whenever. And now I'm noticing things like, oh, now I see the title sequence, and way up in the background there's some of the pizza family, and I now know who the girl who watches the band go past is, and I can recognize the tiny townsfolk, whereas originally they were just too far from the background and with no context for me to understand them as anything except extras.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, a lot of them get shown to you right at the beginning, like Mr. Universe and stuff, but you have to wait for episode 7 to meet Connie, and you really have to wait until episode 18 to meet the entire pizza family. So, right?
Yeah. And of course, detached from the story, I didn't know if this was the sort of show that would do things like that, or if they would just go, oh, we just need some extras back here. Just draw some people-shaped things.
Right. Do you know where Onion is in the opening?
I know I spotted him, but I can't recall.
It's funny when people find Onion, like it's almost, where's Waldo,
I think I spotted
where's
him.
Onion?
Like strange little selfish, earless jaundice boy.
I think it's funny that you sometimes find him inside of machines.
Oh, goodness. What would happen to him if Stephen nicked him?
He'd be the same.
How much of his quirks is just his natural state, and how much is things that he's acquired over the years?
I don't know. Maybe if Stephen licked him, Stephen would change.
Yeah. He's just so onion that he'd interfere with basic powers.
Yeah, I've heard that, onions can make you cry, so.
Yeah. Maybe Stephen would lick him and go, oh, that's why he's called Onion.
Make your eyes water. Speaking of which, I love the line where Pearl says, just today you were crying about snakes. And he says, they don't have any arms. That's true. He cries really easily, usually. So it's definitely an outlier for him to struggle to cry.
Yeah. Though I think many of us have difficulty crying on command.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you put a bunch of importance onto it. Like, you have to cry right now or your friend's going to die. It's like all of a sudden it doesn't work. But he cried about snakes just earlier that day. I thought that was cute.
I hope he doesn't think they'll grow arms if he licks them.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that would be healing the snake.
No. But depending on the snake, it might not be too good for Stephen either. Depending on how his power affects himself.
Yep. Toward the end of the episode, it was kind of going into the unreliable narrator thing for a minute, where it was kind of a good fake out where they have Pearl actually speak these words that she obviously didn't say. And he's like, no, that's what it felt like.
Yeah,
but then we also have...
We can probably take as read that Pearl said something a lot gentler and nothing like that really, but Stephen managed to interpret it so.
Right. And that he probably just felt silly that he thought his crying brought the fountain back to life. And then they're like, no, we unplugged this clog and that's what saved her. And then he just felt very silly for thinking that he had anything to do with it.
Sadly, they missed the opportunity to have Pearl or Garnet carrying a plunger made of gem weapon energy.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah. We need a gem plunger. There was also that scene right toward the end where he looks up through the water when he's under the water and he thinks he sees the statue moving. Yeah. I'm curious what you thought about that, whether that was a trick of the light or if there was something to it. Like, what did you think about that?
So it's a combination of perspective and panic. Because he was suddenly trapped underwater, healing water or otherwise. So between being below the statue of his beloved mother and that part of even Stephen must be thinking, oh, I really have to get out of the water now. That's going to be a bit difficult. That he may see his mother as reaching down toward him, or wishing that was so.
Yeah, I assume that the power that Stephen has to heal others does not transfer to them. Like now, if Connie was spitting and healing flowers or something, doesn't seem to transfer.
Yeah, well, maybe it's like the energy of the saliva gets used up. And
it did its thing and then it's done.
Yeah.
Those sparkles.
Whereas only Stephen can like generate it, as it were.
Yeah. I liked how supportive Connie was with Stephen. Just, she's trying to reassure him that even if he's not magic in the way he wants to be, he doesn't need to do anything to be right there with her. It's sweet. I was a little surprised that she was moving toward him like she was going to kiss him. Yeah. But, especially he's just covered in snot. He looks terrible. And she's just like, you're precious to me. And, it's so sweet. I love their relationship.
Yeah. Would they have kissed without the headache? We may never know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Connie, despite being more mature than Stephen, is still only 12. So she's not relationship.
Yeah. Oh, what was it that I read? There's one of the writers of the show, Matt Burnett, which I believe I've mentioned him before. He would sometimes respond to fan questions on Twitter. And I think somebody asked about their relationship, like, are they going to get together or are they going to kiss? And he said something hilarious like, no, I think it's not going to happen due to a cooties outbreak in Beach City. So cute. But at least they never do that in the show where they talk about girls having cooties or boys having cooties. You never see that kind of gendered crap in the story.
No, thus far, other than that slight romantic implication this week, there's never been anything that their friendship is somehow not right or unusual because one's a boy and one's a girl.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no like toxic masculinity in it, except for maybe Lars once in a while of, I'd show you what a real man looks like and stuff like that. I mean,
which they slightly get away with because it is portrayed as so toxic.
Right. That Lars is claiming that he's a real man and he looks like he would look like this with his shirt off or whatever while he's struggling to open a can of herring that Sadie has to open for him. So everyone can see he's the silly one here. But, this week Stephen says, I guess I'm just too tough to cry. But, he doesn't relate that to like, oh, I'm a boy. Boys don't cry. Like he cries.
Yeah, it's part of his occasional flight of fancy of being a great hero. But
yeah, being strong and stuff. He wants to be strong. Yeah, he's got too many lady-ish creatures around him to think that strength is associated with boys. So that's nice. It's a nice change. I like it.
Now, as you say, I like the way they do that without bringing attention to it.
Yeah. And then we can bring attention to it while we pull it apart.
Yeah. As we extend into hour 2 of talking about 11 minutes of kids' cartoon.
Right. There's no singing.
No. I mean, Amethyst near death would be the prime time for a topic of a song, but I guess we're just too choked up to sing.
As you mentioned, they have so much story, so much already in this 11 minutes that they probably wouldn't have been able to get a song in there without sacrificing something that they already did so well. The background music had a lot of Rose influences, of course. I wrote down the titles over here. The background ones are called Overgrown Brambles, Rose's Fountain, and Rose's Theme comes on once.
Many Rose numbers this week.
Yeah, that was, I guess, what was playing when we saw all the rose petals falling and everything was beautiful and replenished with, all the brambles were cleaned up again, and it played a lovely rose-related song. So, nice mood.
Yeah, I am really appreciating some of the score the past few weeks, and I really like the way they do the characters motifs.
I do too. She's got strings and some piano in most of her music. I love it. It really it fits the character really well. Those are some very expressive and versatile instruments. So I have some food stories for you.
Oh, do tell.
Well, I'm sure you noticed that we had a cliff picnic.
Yeah, we have a picnic, and where there's a picnic, there's food.
Yes. This picnic bothered me on a level it probably shouldn't have, because Connie walks up there with this picnic basket and she takes just a sandwich that's not in anything. She just takes a sandwich out and hands it to Steven, takes one out. And I'm like, Connie, what kind of heretic are you that you don't know how to wrap up a sandwich?
And
good Lord.
How did it stay intact?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's a heathen because she's just taking these naked sandwiches out. I decided that they were peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And,
the classics.
Yeah, I made a cute little cliff picnic with my lion plushie in the background and Stephen and Connie. But I'm sure that you also noticed the durian box, the Durian Juice.
Yep.
I have quite a story about this. You are at least passively familiar with durian, I assume.
I am aware of them, yes.
So what do you know about durian?
I know that they're spiky and bad things happen to me if I eat them.
Bad things happen to you if you eat them? Well, I think you talked about that before, that it does not agree with you, yes?
Yeah. So I see this and I go, oh, you're drinking durian juice. You're taking your life into your hands, kids.
Yes. Well, so I got into watching Steven Universe in like 2015. It was after the first season had completed. So it was pretty early, but still sort of a latecomer, it felt like. But I didn't know what durian was at the time that I first saw them drinking these juice boxes. I just figured, it's a juice box. I went to New York City. I haven't already told this story, have I? I don't think I have.
Not on the show.
Right. Okay, so I went to New York. I was walking around with some family and we ran into, or one of the people in our party was saying, you got to go smell the durian in the Chinese market. And I'm like, smell? What's going on? Oh, it smells bad. It's stinky. It smells like dead things. And I'm like, what? Why do I want to smell this? But anyway, we didn't end up getting to smell the durian. They didn't have any. But I come away thinking, do Connie and Steven like smell like death all the time when they're drinking this durian juice? But a friend of mine said, well, actually processed durian does not stink. I'm like, oh, I did not know that. I did not realize. So my prospects for making this became a little brighter at that point. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can get some processed durian and I won't smell like a corpse when I drink it. I went to the Chinese market. Well, there's a Pan-Asian market down the street from me. Rode my bicycle to it in Florida. And I found this huge, chilled tub of raw durians, just these ginormous stink machines sitting there. And next to it was some frozen. So I was like, okay, maybe this is processed enough. I had read online that frozen durian would take away some of the smell. And I bought a small carton of it, started to bike home. And I'm like, what is that smell? Oh, okay. It's Florida. It's the summertime. We're in the summer heat. And I think it was winter, but it was still hot because it's Florida.
Yeah,
and
Florida.
It's stinking up the path as I'm biking. It didn't smell as bad as advertised, but it just smelled like this sort of tropical musky scent with a little bit of sewer on the side. I don't know. It smelled kind of like sweet, but So I took it home. I put it in my freezer. It took a day and a half to stop stinking. And I was terrified. I was like, what am I going to do? It was partially frozen still and it smelled like a smell I don't want in my house. So when the time finally came and my courage returned, I took it outside and it really wasn't too bad, but it was definitely something that you shouldn't have in an enclosed space. But I had heard horror stories of like people complaining, like your neighbors coming over and complaining if you brought this home, or evacuations of airplanes because someone had a durian in their bag. It's banned in some cities.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm like, I have it in my house. What am I going to do? It really wasn't as bad as all that, but it was, I took this durian out of its box and defrosted it a little in warm water. And I ended up having to pull these giant disturbing seeds out of it. They're like bigger than a plum stone. Huge. And the flesh of it is extremely soft and creepy kind of. And I put it in my blender. I was thinking, okay, I can juice this. I'm from Florida. I think you can juice fruit. There's no juice. So I threw it in the blender and I blended it up. I added a little bit of club soda to it, I think, to make it juicy, because I was like, you can't drink this. It's a smoothie. So I made it liquidy enough to put in a juice box, and I decorated my little juice boxes to make them look like the show. I drank a little bit of it. It was yucky. I buried it in my yard, and that was that. So that's my story of durian. What I put up with for this show, I tell you what.
I'm just having this visceral reaction now.
That was not the last time I had to buy durian for the show, but that comes later.
I have phantom durian smell in my nose now.
No, I'm so sorry. It's not good. See, I'm allergic to kiwi and pineapple, so I was wondering if I would be allergic to this, but I don't know.
Yeah, fruit allergies are weird. I'm allergic to tropical fruit, except for guava.
Oh, I don't like guava.
Yeah. But
so
it's like
papaya.
one of the tropicalist fruits there is, and I'm like, oh, I'm fine.
How do you like to eat guava? Just eat the fruit or juice?
The
or
juice.
What? Yeah?
Yeah.
I've had guava juice and I just don't like it. Oh, well.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible person. For the factoids section of this podcast, I actually have written down what Amethyst's dialogue was reversed.
I wondered if that was a thing. I had a feeling it would be more than just noises. I am not skilled enough to sort of unreverse it in my head.
Yeah, me either. I mean, it sounded backwards-y, but it sounded a little more like corrupted than that too. So I don't know what treatments they gave it. If it was just reversed or what.
Her last line about caring sounded like it was the sounds of the forward said backwards, then reversed, if you see what I mean. I think they did on Twin Peaks.
Right. Yeah. I think it's like that, where they learn to say those words backwards and then it's put forward. Is that what that is? They speak it backwards-y.
Yeah. The bloke on Twin Peaks apparently can just do it as a thing he does, which I'm childishly jealous of.
That's ridiculous.
I've done it with short things for people for various audio effects where it was just a short sentence, but you can work out how the sounds break down and you sort of get the backward sounds and flip them around.
So cool. Love that. That's so cool. But of course, people took the audio and played it backwards to see
of course.
What it would sound like. And I've listened to the people who have gone a step farther than I would. If somebody else hadn't done it, I probably would have eventually done it, but I didn't have to. So most of them are not that very interesting. Some of them, I'm just looking at my other window here where I have them written down, and she just says stuff like, "Ugh, I'm going home," or "Hey guys, what are you doing on the beach?" One of them where she had a really long one and she ended it by like slapping herself, and she was mimicking tears. She was saying, "Hey, if your body can't cry on its own, you got to make it cry."
Yeah.
And he replied, "Pain can make one cry. Where is pain?" And also this is funny. If you had been able to understand her, even though she was speaking backwards, this would have been her spoiling what was going to happen next. Because she said, "Hey, the vines are coming to life and are going to kill Steven, just so you know." I like that one. And there's just a few more. "Cheer up, will ya? A little help, and don't worry or anything. I'm good." It's kind of sweet, but Like you said, maybe she just didn't know how hurt she was.
Yeah, I have so many feels about Amethyst coping with her injury.
Wow. Oh, well, Amethyst is still your favorite character too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so as mentioned, this is a Raven and Paul episode, so we knew that. And the description is when Amethyst cracks her gemstone, Stephen and the crystal gems go on a mission to heal her.
Yeah, fair.
I have a couple other little factoids about it. One of them was that I heard some funny stuff about this airing outside the United States, and some people didn't like that it had the word kiss in the title, that they didn't want it an indirect kiss to be the title, so they just called it stuff like Stephen's Power. It's weird. And in some of the languages, like they'll do dubs in a lot of other places, and in some of them they didn't bother to do backwards dialogue for Amethyst. They just, they had the same dialogue, but she just said them and they didn't screw up her speech. I don't know how that comes across. So I'm glad we got what we got.
Yeah. Really made it look like she was just breaking down inside.
Yeah. And was completely out of touch with how she was even being perceived. You were making a lot of faces during that part.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
Brand spanking new, mint in box.
So the only thing I have left is to show you some merch.
Oh, yeah.
And thankfully, they do not make spaghetti-limbed Amethyst as a doll. She might do that for entertainment, but yeah, there's not really any specific stuff that's associated with this episode that I was just like, oh yeah, I'll do that. But so what I decided to do was right around the time of this episode, which, let's see, when did it air? I think this episode aired in September 2014.
Right.
Yeah. And right before this, like just the previous month, there was an art exhibit that did Adventure Time and Steven Universe and a bunch of other people too. But at Gallery Nucleus, there was an event for Rebecca Sugar had some of her pieces and stuff that were associated with those shows and some other artists too. And this was the flyer for that event. I have it as a piece of art.
Oh,
and it's framed. So I took it down off my wall. This is an actual flyer. It has holes in it from when it was tacked up. Oh. And I chose this because it has Rose kind of looming large over the main 4 gems and Greg. So I really like this art. Rebecca Sugar drew this. And it is also on a very rare comic. This is the cover of the 2014 comic. So this exhibition was August 9th to August 31st. Tribute exhibition. I can't talk. So this was drawn by her in 2014. And I finally managed to find a copy of Steven Universe #1 with this cover. It's super rare. And I was looking for it for over a year. And I finally found one and I lost my mind.
Brilliant.
It was great. Huh?
Brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
That you found it.
Yeah, I'm very happy. So now I actually have all the #1 covers, but I'm still missing 2 variants that I haven't been able to find. But I have every other Steven Universe comic. Some ridiculous. Some of them are very cool, but some still have some spoilery covers. So eventually, I guess my comic books will have to be merch. That's on the cover of one. So the holes are not very obvious, but they're there on this flyer. So I put it up on my wall.
Yeah, it looks nice all framed and stuff as you got it there too.
Yeah, I did the framing myself. I'm not great at that, but for smaller pieces, I'll do it myself.
Insane.
And that is that.
Yeah.
So I have said plenty about this episode, so I think I'm out of stuff to say. How about you?
I'm pretty much the same. Or I could wallow in my gushing and feeling again and probably never come out.
Wow. Definitely one of the top 5 for Daria.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be interesting to maybe talk about some of your favorite stuff when you have more perspective, more episodes under your belt to do that with. Cool. Maybe we'll. Well, so the mid-season finale is next, as we've discussed, 25 and 26. So it's kind of a 2-parter, but I think it's still, we'll do them the same day, but we may still want to split them up in the discussion unless you object to that.
No, that's fine. I'll trust your judgment, for not least because you've seen them and I haven't.
Yeah. So the next 2 do go together, and maybe we'll just next time we meet for our talking a blue streak, we can kind of discuss the first one in the context of the second one after we've seen the second one, but I'll be curious what you think of the first one by itself too. So there's plenty to talk about, and that'll be a nice milestone there too, halfway through the first season.
Yeah. Wow.
So I'm excited to share that with you and with our listeners.
I'm excited to reach a big old cliffhanger. So
a cliffhanger. We already think it's a cliffhanger, Darius.
I guess I'm just assuming because they're the big mid-season.
Oh,
because that's how it goes in other shows.
Can't really say whether you're right or wrong at this point. So, no, I guess that's true, isn't it? That mid-season finales are usually like they leave you hanging.
Yeah.
Well, we shall see before too long. All right, it has been a pleasure.
Right. So join us next time, dear viewer and listener. See if I have my mind blown yet again.
You may. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. You've been listening to Ivy and Daria on Not So Giant Women.
You can find episodes of the show in video form by looking up Not So Giant Women on YouTube.
Or in audio form at anchor.fm/Not So Giant Women or your podcatcher of choice. You can also find us on Facebook.
Audio production by Daria.
Video production and music by Ivy.
Daria can also be heard on Podsploitation, the Ozploitation podcast.
And Ivy at her Steven Universe fan blog at love-takes-work.tumblr.com.
Steven Universe was created by Rebecca Sugar and remains property of Cartoon Network.
No infringement is intended.